In this video tutorial, I'll discuss actions and automation inside of Photoshop. Sometimes you'll have a batch of images and you want to apply the exact same effects to multiple images. It's not uncommon in image production that you might need to do the same thing over and over again to, for example, an entire folder of images, maybe thousands of images. And the steps you might need to apply to each of these might be multifaceted. In other words, you might need to do multiple different things to each photo, and that can be really time consuming. Fortunately, Photoshop has the capability to actually record what you want to do to a particular photo, a set of actions that you want to enact, and then play back those actions on a separate photo. Then what you could do is take that recording, the set of actions, and apply it to a batch of photos through automation. Let's explore these ideas. And so inside of Photoshop, there is a panel called the Actions panel. You can toggle it. It looks like the little play button right here. And inside of there's a number of default actions that you can apply. Some of these will give you some unique Photoshop effects, and things like making a wood frame on something is a default action that's a part of this. So if I select that particular action and simply tell it to play, it would run through all of the steps that will happen with this. So the image size says it has to be at least 100 by 100 in size. It is, so I'll continue. And it's going to run through this and apply this wood frame. It did that by running a series of actions. I can open that up and see what it's done, but it actually has made copies of this. It applied an inner shadow. It added this wooden frame. It added this bevel and emboss feature to the wooden frame. And so all of that was just applied. And so those are a series of Photoshop steps I was simply able to apply with a single click. Now that wood frame option is an action that comes sort of packaged with Photoshop by default. I don't want that particular action. I'm going to revert my file back to the original. And instead, what I'd like to do is actually record my own action. So let's suppose we had a batch of images. And so I've got 6 images open here in tabs. We can see that I can run through those different tabs, and they're just a variety of different photos from diving. And let's say what I wanted to do was put these on a website. And maybe what I needed was square thumbnail images of each of them, and I wanted those thumbnails to have a particular color palette applied. And so that might be several steps for me to do for each image. And so what I'd like to do is actually record an action that can record those steps, and then it will allow me to play back that action on other photos. Let's explore. So what I'm going to do is open up my Actions panel and choose to add a new action, create a new action. When we do that, you'll bring up a dialog box that says, okay, what do you want to call that new action? And I'll call it Mat 110 test action. So I'm just going to give it a name, and it's going to save it into my default actions folder that's here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start recording now. And you can see that I'm recording an action because our record button is right there in red. Now I can always stop this if I had a step that I didn't want to actually be a part of the recording. So I could actually stop the recording right here. And when I want to play back an action, of course, I'll hit the play option to play through. So now that I'm recording my actions, I want to go through the steps of turning this into a thumbnail image with a special color palette. So what I'm going to do that is duplicate the background. I'm just going to drag it down here, make a duplicate, and I'm going to apply some changes to it. So one thing I might do is, let's say the thumbnail needed some higher contrast. I'm going to bring my contrast adjustment layer up, and I'm going to add some contrast to it, maybe a little brightness to the actual image. So we'll make this, let's just push it a little further, make it like a high contrast image. The next thing I might want to do is apply an effect to it, such as a gradient overlay. So I'm going to choose my gradient overlay option that's here, and I could apply whatever gradient overlay I want. I'm just going to use this purple and orange one that's there and apply that gradient overlay on the actual image. Now I could adjust the scale here if I wanted that to look a little bit differently. Maybe I want that to go across. I'm going to make it sort of right here around 93%, let's say, and I'll click OK. So whatever settings I actually add, it's recording all of those particular settings. The next thing I do is the next thing I want to do is actually make this a little bit smaller and turn it into a square thumbnail. So I'll start by doing my image size. I'll say image size here, and let's say I needed the size of this to be 200 by 200 for the thumbnails. So I'm going to make the height, the smaller size, 200 first, and then I'm going to have to actually crop 67 pixels off of the width. So I'll start with the height, and then I'll go to my image canvas size in order to do the width. And I'll apply the width, I'll crop from both sides in this case, and I'll proceed and crop. I now have a thumbnail image in the color space that I wanted. So I'm going to actually save this out next. I'll use the Save As option, and I'll save it onto my computer and put it into a folder. I'm going to put it into this Fish2 folder that's there as a copy, and I'm going to choose the JPEG format for that particular image. I'll hit Save, and it will ask me the quality that I want for the image. I'm going to leave this at a quality of 10 and click OK. Okay, it actually saved that particular image out. I'm done with what I wanted to do for that image. So I'm going to hit stop on my record right here, and I'm done recording that particular action. But it's all here in this folder called Mat 110 Test Action. I duplicated my layer, I added adjustment layers, I set different layer styles, I changed the image size, I changed the canvas size, and I saved out that particular image. Quite a few steps if I had a large batch of images that I needed to apply that to. Let's go ahead and just choose a different image here. So I'll just switch photos. Let's say I wanted this photo. Now that I have that actual action, what I could do is simply click one time on it and hit play, and it will do all of the steps that I just made. So I'm going to hit play, and it's going to go through the entire thing very quickly and simply create a new version of that, and it even saved it out for me. You'll see inside of this folder that I had called Fish2, I now have another copy here, and it saved it as photocopy JPEG, but you'll see that I actually had another version of this that was created. I'm going to delete these two photos from the actual folder called Fish2. I'm going to get rid of that, and I'll come back to my original photo, and in this particular case I'll go ahead and revert it back to its original source. And what I could do is on any of these photos I could just simply close them all now. What I want to do is get rid of actually apply this action to multiple photos. So what I'm going to do is I can close the other photos that are here, or I can, or it doesn't really matter if they're closed or open actually. But one thing that now that I have an action, you can see how easy it is to apply that action to a different photo, right? You just hit play and it would apply the action to that particular photo. So that's great. I can do that to a whole folder of photos, however. So if I wanted to do that to a whole folder, I would go under the File menu and choose to automate. And so there's some different automation features that come with Photoshop, like making contact sheets and things like that. But what I'm interested in is some batch production. And using batch production, you can actually choose a particular action you want to apply. And you'll notice that I've got this Mat 110, the last one that you made is the one that's selected by default. You can choose a folder for your source images. So I'm going to choose this folder called Fish, which has about 6 images in it, and I can show you that particular folder. So I'm going to get rid of this one. It's called Fish. It has 6 images in it. And then I could say where are these going to go? So I'm going to actually choose a destination for where all these folders are going to go. Or these files will go in the end. So I could click on choose and choose a folder, and I already chose one called Fish2. So it's going to take the folders, the files from Fish, and put them into Fish2. I'm going to override any save commands because otherwise it will prompt me to save and get a new name for each one. But because I have a save action as part, I actually have that as part of my action to save the file out in the format that I wanted. I can override that and make sure that that works. You'll see that when I click it, it says, oh, you have to have a save as step in your action, otherwise there's nothing that can be saved. So I already have that, so I can override the save as command. Now what I can do is simply click OK, and it's going to go through each of these files very quickly and change them all, and then close itself. My folders here, so this was the original folder of fish, and then I'll switch that to fish 2, where we can see that it saved the entire batch of images and put each of these into that new folder. Each of the images are sized as I wanted, each have the color palette that I had desired applied, and I was able to do in one step what would have taken me quite a bit of time had I had to do that to each individual photo. So imagine doing that to a batch of like 1,000 photos that you had to resize or turn into thumbnails. It can really save you a lot of time. So that's some of the magic of actions and automation inside of Photoshop. You can bring open your action panel, record a brand new action by clicking on the record button, and then be able to simply play back that action by hitting the play option right here, or by using the automate feature to apply that to an entire folder or batch of images. All right, enjoy exploring actions and automation on your own using Photoshop.